Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Optics in Action, where we spotlight leaders with vision and clarity. And today, I'm really excited to have Sheila Montney with us. Sheila had a very successful career in the corporate world, and now she is the CEO and managing partner of Win Together LLC, in addition to being a city council member in the city of Bloomington, Illinois. So, Sheila, welcome to this episode of Optics in Action. We're excited to have you.
Ryan, thank you so much for inviting me.
So, I'm really excited. We're going to talk about some things with the Shingo Institute. We're going to talk about government and people and process in government. Before we get into some of that and some recognition you got from the Shingo Institute, before we get into all of that, tell me a little bit about why you do what you do. So, you've had a very successful career, and now you're pouring your heart and soul, it seems, into government. And tell me more about why you're compelled to do that.
Well, Ryan, I was very blessed to have a long career with State Farm, a company that most of your listeners probably have heard of. So 35 years, 7 locations, but midpoint into that career, something changed for me. And that was an assignment I was given to look at our life business. And if we were starting it over again, how would we run it? No boundaries. And that led me to really having an opportunity to think strategically, to think about how organizations were succeeding, the challenges that people were facing. Through that, I met someone who said, have you ever looked at the Shingo Institute? ShingoPrize.org. And I met someone else who introduced me to the late Dr. Michael Hammer. And I know a lot of your listeners may not have heard of him today. Sadly, he passed away about 15, 16 years ago, but he was an absolute rock star. He wrote Reengineering the Corporation, youngest tenured MIT professor ever. And he came at that process from a strategic level, from a macro point of view. How would you run an enterprise managing by process, by value stream, backing up from your customer view? So those two things put together really caused me to learn that how to, in non-manufacturing settings, is generally just left to the we've always done it this way type thinking, right? However long it's been, whether it's a 90-year-old business like I was working on, or even a business that's 10 or 15 years ago, and this certainly is true in local government. Most people in non-manufacturing have never sat back and looked at the math of how they do their work.
Yeah.
So being awakened to that, really, to building what I would call machines so that in non-manufacturing settings, people could then be engaged and empowered to improve upon that, just like you see in Toyota Production System and all of the organizations that are using Lean today. Those two things really changed my career and changed my life.
Yeah. And so that compelled you. So at some point then, you retired from State Farm and you got really excited and passionate about local government. So tell me about sort of how that transition happened, or what compelled you to really get energized about moving forward with this.
Well, way back in 2016, there was a Wall Street Journal article about Dr. Pepper and Dr. Pepper's foray into using Lean. And the article was pretty interesting, pretty compelling. It talked about all the value they'd achieved, and yet they were still at batting practice if it was baseball. The governor of Illinois at that time happened to read that article and thought, we could do this. That was the catalyst for the state of Illinois setting up a department called Rapid Results. By, again, just the connections through the Shingo Institute, I got a call from the person who had been tasked with setting up that department and asked if I would help support them through the stand-up of that. That really is what caused me to become very interested in these concepts in government. And it was very humbling as we provided training and development opportunities for the staff of the state of Illinois to realize just how little resources local government and state government employees have to actually build capabilities in themselves. I know even as we're talking today about current topics and things going on nationally and all of the efforts, with budget crunches and things like that, while the private sector sometimes even is supported by public grants to fund their development to help drive economic development, state and local governments, very little is brought to bear to help them build the capabilities that they desperately need in order to be able to build scale, deliver more value at lower cost.
Yeah.
So that's what caused me to think in the back of my mind, I want to devote my second chapter to this. And in 2020 and 2021, that's when I transitioned from State Farm to waking up every day studying the application of lean, the Shingo model in the public sector.
That's fantastic. So there's two things that you mentioned I really resonate with. One, you mentioned about Dr. Pepper and that even with all the work that they had done, they still were at batting practice or felt like they were at batting practice. I think that's a great way for all of us to live. I think that metaphor resonates that even professional athletes still do batting practice. Even the best of the best still do batting practice. They're bringing it back to the kind of the fundamentals or the foundational skills really refines and makes us better. It sharpens the saw. So I think that's really cool that you brought that up. And I think for all of our listeners, no matter where you are on that journey, even Dr. Pepper at some point we're still at batting practice, right? That type of thing. So the second thing is that impact on local governments. So local governments don't have those resources to enable their development of the local governmental leaders and things like that. So what are you doing to change that? What have you been doing to start to enable that in a different way?
Well, the first thing I did was to go out and figure out who is doing this well. Is it an issue of just finding the resources and connecting them to other organizations or to governmental organizations? And what I found is that anywhere on earth, I believe, I could not find any custom training, writing, teaching, lean capabilities in the language of government. It's similar to what I found in the frontier in financial services when these concepts were just being introduced to financial services in 2005, 6, 7, around in that era. Everything was rooted in manufacturing. And then there would be a segue into, okay, and now this is how it applies to you. So I had learned, over my years of serving as a planning commissioner and then now city council member as well, that there are lots of feelings out there, just like we had as well in non-manufacturing settings. We don't make widgets. We're not manufacturing. Plenty of excuses, right? And I respect that because every environment is different. And the public sector environment
even different
is
manufacturing plants are different from each other. I think, yes,
exactly.
like every organization is unique. Every organization, every different type of organization has uniqueness. But to your point, even respecting that, there's still the fundamentals that apply to government.
That's exactly right. And so, I happen to be telling the story about Win Together and the concepts of bringing together the OPEX community to partner with local governments at an multi-industry event down in Florida. And the CEO of Opus Works happened to be there, and he reached out to me afterwards and said, let's build something together. So we actually built a suite of e-learning modules that are specific to state and local government, provincial government, with examples really from all over the world. So that is out there, and that is one way at scale that we can bring these capabilities. But Ryan, you can't watch a bunch of videos on how to play golf and think you can go out on the course and play. It just doesn't work that way. So we've also brought together some amazing people who have a lot of experience in the public and private sector in lean coaching, and also bringing to bear the resources of the Shingo Institute to be able to serve this market.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So speaking of the Shingo Institute, you mentioned prior to us starting the recording that you recently gave a keynote presentation to the Shingo, was it at the Shingo conference? Is that Tell me more
Yes,
about
it's the 37th International Shingo Conference. They've been around a long time. They have a very international following, and it's really a unique conference. So many conferences are all about case studies and things like that, which are great and you learn. I happen to be talking with an industry veteran after this conference who was attending a Shingo conference for the first time, and he's like, it just felt different. And it feels different, I think, because everybody really is anchored on the Shingo model. And the Shingo model is a perfect fit for the public sector, for nonprofit organizations, just as it has been for decades in the private sector. Founded in culture, lead with humility, respect for every individual, building capabilities and continuous improvement systems, and delivering results that sustain over time. So yes, I was there. I led the first ever challenge for the Shingo Prize from a financial services organization in 2011. In 2014, I was invited to join their executive advisory board, and I've been serving since. And this time around was really touching for me to have been inducted into the Shingo Academy. So that was really special. I'm very
that is quite an
grateful,
honor.
and
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So, as you think about that journey, and I think it's really insightful, the thing that you shared there is that it's culture first. The Shingo model is really culture first and respect for people. I know that's a core part of lean and lean manufacturing. But sometimes I think lean gets a bad name because folks will use it as a, well, we're going to do lean. And what they really do is they just do cost cutting exercises and they don't really build the culture of continuous improvement. They don't really respect the people as they're going through it. The Shingle model, how does that help organizations for those who are listening who may not be familiar with it? How does that help organizations to really keep people and culture at the center of continuous improvement and how they move forward with that?
It's so important. And you're right. I mean, lean tools can be used to achieve short term cost cutting, even though, of course, the genesis of it is not just about that. It is also about engaging and empowering people, rooted back to Taichi Ono and Shigeo Shingo and the Toyota production system. But however, most organizations, do see significant financial benefits, and that pulls them forward. Let's do more, let's do more. And if you're not careful with that, you're creating capacity in your organization that does impact people.
Mhm.
And what do you do? Do you I guess cash the check on that, for lack of a better word, or do you have a commitment to engaging, empowering, retraining, redeploying? You can put math to the cost of turnover and help you understand the value proposition of investing in people. And you
Mhm.
can also see incredible things. I'll give you two examples of kind of what enculturated Shingo model principles look like for me from my past experience.
Yeah, that'd be great.
First of all, when you're in non-manufacturing, back to the how-to department versus the we've always done it that way department, without a standard, there can be no Kaizen, right? I mean, that's kind of a tenet of lean, which I do believe in. So you have to kind of define how much work you can do using engineering principles as a foundation. But we took the approach seriously of engaging, empowering by developing capabilities and helping people become problem solvers. Because when you can unleash the power of problem solvers at an individual level, at a factory of one level, or at a level of thousands, here's a couple examples of what that looks like. I walked into the office one day and I saw a recently hired secretary who had just joined her organization, who had just completed several days of lean training, because we believe you can't do it in a 3-hour Gilligan's Island tour. You really
Indeed.
need to learn not only the concepts, but why they apply. And she had a clipboard. She had ordered a breakfast for a group of executives who had been meeting that day and visitors to the organization. And she was going through looking at the table after the first pass. And I walked by one of my team members and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he goes, "You're going to love this." She's using what she learned at these classes. She's looking at what she ordered versus what was consumed on the first pass. She's making notes to help her understand how to be more effective at matching that and having less waste into the future. Example one. I just love that. And how proud is she then to go home and say, "You know what? I did this. I
That's
initiated this. I did this." The second that I can think of is two mail rooms at two sister locations. And when you are going to build a culture that really speaks to the Shingo model, I mean, it's really about empowering people with information as well. These two sister sites in the mailroom, they knew each other's cost structure. They knew what they were spending, and they knew they had mirror sites with identical flow of volume of work. And this one site noticed that they were spending about 100,000 more in postage than their sister site. And it's like, how can this be? Well, this team of people, again, we put everyone through these technical training sessions to understand the math of all of this. They figured out through root cause analysis and understanding, the difference in going line by line, that they were ordering a different weight of paper at their location than the other location was. And that discovery, which only took them a couple of days, meant $100,000 a year in improvement in cost savings.
That's fantastic. So I'll take it back to the batting practice thing. It's going back to the fundamentals. It's going back to the root cause and looking at the very specific things. It's not always some big miraculous discovery of some new innovation, but oftentimes it's practicing, it's understanding, it's seeking to understand what's really going on and diving into a root cause like that. I love that story about the clipboard and the woman who was going through and looking at what the executives took or during that first pass. I've heard sort of a similar analogy that the busboy in the restaurant should be the chef's best friend, right? Because they can see what people aren't eating on the plate. And that feedback loop is often missed. Sometimes that feedback loop of the person closest to understanding the problem is never asked for their opinion. And when that happens, you get the same results, which are not great results. But when you go back to the person who's closest to the problem and really understand what do they do, why do they do it, how do they do it, that's when really insightful things can happen. So I'm really excited about that story. That's definitely an interesting perspective for sure.
Well, I was visiting with someone a number of years ago who was talking about his experience. And, he said, this organization had my pair of hands for 30 years. They could have had my head and my heart for free. And, that's very sad, first of all, but
That
also
gave me a little
to
bit of
just,
chills while you were saying that.
it fuels my passion that this is not only possible, but it's compelling.
So what's next? Like as you look at governments and as you look at local governments and the impact that you're starting to have through training and through engagement by having a great team of folks going in and not just training, but also coaching, what's next? Where do you go from here with it? You've got a huge problem that you're looking to solve and you're taking some bites at it, but where does this go in 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, over 90,000 municipal governments alone. And, we've just, I think state and local government in the US alone, about 22 million people. It's a huge, huge market. But you know what? Everything starts with one and then, goes from there. A few different things. First of all, direct in working with local governments to try and help them understand the value proposition of improvement. We recently did a project for an organization that was in their employee evaluation systems. And through that, we're able to help show them a positive 130% payback in 90 days and made the process not only more employee friendly, but more impactful to actually connecting it to improving their results and improving significantly environmental sustainability as well. So that's great. We can do projects, we can demonstrate the value there. That's kind of how Lean started, at a project level across most of non-manufacturing organizations over the last 25, 30 years. A second piece, though, that I'm really excited about is building cohorts across communities to help them. 75% of municipalities are under 5,000 in population, and most of them are declining in population. So when you think of counties, even Ryan, across Illinois that only have, 10 or 12,000 people, and one of the first communities that we did work for had declined almost 50% in their population, and yet their fixed overhead is still there. Their fixed overhead is increasing. They're running their city government, including police and fire, on 11 FTEs. Think about that. So when, we're trying to help pull together regional cohorts so that people within proximity can do how things used to be done, thousands of years ago. We'll try to create our own shared services so that we can create scale among us. We're not competing, we're helping. So I'm excited about exploring that possibility. And then the third is bringing together the private and public sector in these learning cohorts. It's in every one of your listeners' interest in the private sector for their local governments to perform better, not only for them as residents, but also for economic development and the success of their businesses. So I'm really excited about that. The city of Bloomington actually hosted the first Discover Excellence Shingo class that at that time we believed was in the history of the Institute, bringing together local employers to study alongside them as they learned the Discover Excellence workshop content, building relationships, building an understanding of why it's not as easy as those of us on the outside looking in might think, well, why don't you just change X, Y, or Z? Well, guess what? The city manager, I have so much respect for that role. The city managers, the city administrators in these local governments experience what the roulette wheel of a complete set of bosses every 2 years with completely different sets of priorities.
What a difficult challenge, right?
Most of the time, no understandings of the inner workings of government, and yet they control all the spending decisions and the strategic priorities. Yeah. So having the opportunity to get these folks learning together so that they can see both ways. You can learn, if you're in the public sector, how what you're doing profoundly impacts the success of your local residents and your businesses. It's good for you. And when those employers can also see the complexity of local government, which is just shocking. It's very humbling. The more you get into it, the more you realize, just how different it really is. It's great for them too. They build empathy, they build relationships, and they can succeed working together.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So how do if folks want to learn more about what you're doing, learn more about how they could bring this to their city or municipality, what's the best way for folks to get in contact with you?
Well, you're welcome to find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find there. I think I'm one of only 2 people with my name. I know sometimes you put in a name and it says there's 6,000 people with this name. So Sheila Montney on LinkedIn. And you can also visit our website, wintogetherllc.com. You can email me straight from the website. Would love to hear from you. And if you are serving in your local government or on a board or commission, or would like to talk more about how you can get involved to help contribute your talents and also to help your local governments improve, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you.
Well, this is in all of our best interests for our government to work more effectively, more efficiently, more in service to the people, impact people through great processes and culture. All of those things that we just talked about are of great interest, I think, to everybody. Each of us is impacted by that. So thank you so much, Sheila, for what you're doing and for being a guest today on Optics in Action.
Thank you again for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Hey there, my name is Ryan Weiss, and I am the host of the Optics in Action podcast. where we spotlight visionary leaders who bring clarity and innovation to their industries. If you are interested in being a guest, or if you know someone who would be, you can find more information about the podcast and listen to previous episodes at opticsinaction.com. We'd be thrilled to have you on the show and can't wait to hear your story.